One of the biggest mistakes that I've ever made and that other people continue to make is trying way too hard to be a good person. And when I say good person, I don't mean morally. I mean trying to make sure that nobody was upset with me, trying to make sure that everyone liked me, and trying to make sure that I always looked like a good person in the eyes of others. And when you do that, it sort of just makes you miserable. Because when you change your identity to be built around being quote unquote good, you stop being honest and you stop being who you really are. You're hiding what you really think, and you don't say what you actually want to say because you don't want to disrespect somebody or you don't want conflict. And it's really stupid. Because you just lose yourself and you become miserable. Another thing is, the more you live, the more you realize how many people aren't actually nice and they just do things to be viewed as a good person. And I know it because, again, I used to be the same. I used to do the exact same things. But again, the more you live, the more you realize how dumb it is. You're not going to be with the same group of people for your whole life. So you put on the fake personality that will eventually wear off because you'll forget all about these people. Now, if you continue with trying to be a good person, trying to agree with everybody, trying to agree with the majority, you're going to be wrong. In history, the majority has always been wrong. Now, let's take slavery, for example. People 200 years ago didn't really care about the morality. But any sane individual today will look at it and say, yeah, that's incredibly wrong. But the idea of that is that the more that we continue living, is the more people will realize how wrong the majority has been. And that will continue the further we go. People will eventually realize exactly what I'm talking about now. That putting on this fake persona is useless. That trying to be someone who you are not just makes you miserable. You know, being a good person does absolutely mean being happy with yourself. But when you be a good person by trying to be understanding and sacrificing your feelings so others are happy, you just make yourself miserable. You realize that you're ignoring what you really think, what you really want to do, solely for the purpose to entertain others. The more you think about it, the more that being a good person becomes the furthest idea of jester maxing. It's really what it is. And you just become exhausted with yourself. You're fake without even realizing that you're fake. And it becomes less of a morality thing and more of a, I just want to be viewed as a decent individual. Because people only care about looking like a good person than actually being a good person, than actually being content with themselves, than being content with who they actually are inside. You know, a lot of people call me rude. But when I get called rude, I don't get offended whatsoever. And I think that more people need to understand that their definition of rude is just completely wrong. I'm an extremely honest person. There's nothing that I wouldn't say. Even if it's quote-unquote offensive. If it's true, I'll say it. I have zero problem with that. And if people classify me as a bad person over it, I really couldn't care less. And me personally, I really wouldn't spend my precious time trying to convince somebody that I'm a good person if they think I'm a bad person. And I think everyone should follow that. Because what you think about yourself, the opinion you have on yourself, is a million times more important than the opinion anybody else has on you. And the problem with trying to be this good person is that you don't get that. You don't become happy with the version of yourself because you're purely living for the opinion of others. There's zero you. All of these ugly emotions, anger, insecurity, selfishness, all of these good people, all of these quote-unquote good people have that. But they don't want to admit it. And so they continue wearing this mask and continue to pretend to be someone that they aren't. It makes you less honest, and it shifts you into a person that you aren't. Really being a good person is more about being happy with yourself and being mature enough to be honest about things, even when they're rude. Because if you're not honest with yourself, your situation will only get worse. No matter what. And so, when I stopped trying to be a good person, life just became better. You start to feel more free. You start to say what you actually mean. And you stop forcing emotions and responses that you wouldn't actually say. You stop trying to have this idea of zero commotion. And so after this realization, I've become so much calmer. I'm not trying to maintain an image that isn't true. I am just who I really am. And I have zero embarrassment. I have zero guilt in that. I have the utmost happiness in that, actually. I wouldn't want to be anybody else. And I wouldn't want to live life any other way. Everything happens for a reason. All the suffering that you go through just becomes something better in the end. But so many people don't realize that. And so many people don't tend to care. They only care about the moment. About what people think of you now. But what about in the long run? Because if you're not happy with yourself in the long run, how do you plan on being successful? How do you plan on doing something that you want if you're not going to be yourself? And the more you keep this opinion, the more you realize that the goal of life isn't to be seen as good, but to be true to yourself and to be honest. Because a truthful person is worth way more than someone trying to be a quote-unquote good person who really just hates themselves. So let go of trying to be a good person and start trying to be a real one. That's all I have for you guys today. Sorry for the lack of uploads. I just hadn't really had any great ideas, or I couldn't span them out long enough. But I think you guys deserve something, so this is going to be going out. Also, yeah, I am trying a new style of video, because I think it would be pretty good. So yeah, that's all I have for today. I love you all. I hope you love yourselves. And Jesus loves you. Peace out.